you'll introduce yourself a little bit, but from last semester? Yeah.
1 year.
1 year ago. Okay. You still live to tell the tale. Okay. Well, thank you, Ashvin, for coming forward. I'm sure you're busy, but thank you. Okay, here we go. Go to it, young man. Just enjoy this. Drink it in.
Well, now I'm kind of nervous because you guys are talking about like all the bad things that happen in a presentation. So I don't know what I said we're doing. But yeah, my name is Ashvin. I took 441 in the fall 2024 semester. During my semester, my team worked on an app that tried to help computer science students study for technical coding interviews. And after the class ended, I decided I wanted to keep trying to pursue the idea. So I got together 2 friends. We tweaked the idea a little bit from what it was in class. And we decided to try and make EscapeCodes. So EscapeCodes was a video game to help computer science students stay engaged and motivated while studying for technical interviews. In April of this year, we took this idea and pitched it to the LSA Optimize program, and we received $7,000 of funding. There's the big check. and we continued to work on the project over the summer. We did a couple of rounds of testing over the summer, mostly with our friends. But around late August, I would say, we started to realize that what we had probably wasn't going to pan out, and that we had actually, after 5 months of work, had still a long way to go before we made something that was useful and actually provided value to students. So for this presentation, I'm not going to talk so much about what we made, but more the journey that we went from having a funded prototype to like a scrapped project over the course of 5 months. And I'm going to try to go through like what I think are the 3 biggest mistakes we made. Obviously, we made a ton more mistakes, but I'll talk about the 3 biggest mistakes we made, and I'll try to offer some solutions. And the hope is that by talking about our experience, you guys can hopefully maybe avoid some of the same pitfalls as you work during this semester. And so our first very big mistake was with our problem statement, probably the most fundamental part of any product that you're trying to create. And there's a lot of kind of things we can talk about which are wrong with this problem statement, but the one that I want to focus on is we didn't put a ton of thought into crafting a problem statement that lent itself to an easy or straightforward way of testing whether a solution like actually solved this problem. So the problem statement for EscapeCodes, this is the one that we pitched to the Optimize program, was computer science students struggle to stay engaged and motivated while studying for technical interviews. As a kind of a thought experiment, just think about if someone presented you a solution to this problem, how long would the user have to use the solution before they could actually say, hey, this solved the problem for us? If our goal here is to keep students motivated while they're studying, can they use our product for 10 minutes and then give us useful feedback? Can they use it for a day and then give us useful feedback? They probably have to use it for like a period of like a week or probably even a month and see if they get any benefit over a long period of time, see if they actually were able to stay motivated for a long study time. Which means that as the team, our first iteration, before we can actually start getting feedback, we have to create a product that someone can use for a month, which is a lot harder than creating a product that someone could use for 10 minutes and give feedback on. So having a problem statement where you have to like put a lot of work in before you get your first round of testing in is going to really hinder you. And the way that we kind of just started realizing that our problem was really hard to test was to shift away from thinking of the problem in terms of like a generic audience of computer science students to approaching it from a more personal experience. So instead of saying, this is what computer science students would need to stay more motivated, I can instead say, this is what I, as a computer science student, would need to feel like a product is helping me study better for technical interviews. Personally, I think a product to be worth my time would have to result in me studying 5 days out of the week for a period of maybe 2 or 3 months, the length of a whole interview cycle. And you can see that once you phrase it in that way, it starts to become really clear like what the parameters of testing need to be. You're going to have to test over a period of like 2 or 3 months to be able to see if that person is satisfied, right? And if you do this exercise and realize like, okay, I am going to have to test over that long, that's probably an indication like just try to narrow down your problem statement to something that you can test in a day or even like a couple of minutes ideally. So the second big mistake that we made was false validation. And so what I mean by this is, in addition to deciding what you're going to build, your team is also going to have to decide by what metrics you're going to use to judge if you're like making progress on the thing you're building. And our team decided to use funding as our main metric to decide if we were making progress. I'll go a little bit later into some of the bad things that happened because we did this. But it turns out it's really easy to choose like all sorts of bad metrics to judge your progress. So when I was taking this class, for example, my team got really kind of fixated on judging like our grade for each presentation. If our grade wasn't going up for each presentation, then we must be failing, right? Or we would even like try and overhear what other teams got for their presentations and try to compete with them and say, hey, maybe we felt like we did bad, but those people did worse than us, right? So that must mean we actually did good, right? So, and these are all really silly metrics when you think about it, because when you're making a product to solve a problem, the only thing that matters is whether your product solves the problem for the user, right? So if you're making a pair of rain boots, your rain boots could be funded by Andreessen Horowitz and be made of like advanced nanofiber materials, but if someone can't walk through a puddle with them, come out the other side with their feet dry, then it doesn't really matter. And to kind of connect stuff back to what I said about phrasing the statement in terms of I, you can go one step further and actually just choose to work on a problem that you yourself experience. And the benefit of this is that you will be like your own user. You will be your own customer of your product. And that means you can use your product as you're building it. When you're using your own product, it becomes really painfully apparent whether it's solving the problem you set out to do, because you'll see if your life got better or not. So, and then the third mistake that we made, I put in this term of order of operations and lack of a better term. What I mean by this is if you choose to measure your progress on your project by the wrong metrics, it seems like you tend to do things out of order or do things in a strange order or focus on the wrong things. So because our team decided to use funding as our main measure of success, after we got the funding from the LSA Optimize program, we thought, okay, so in order for us to keep being successful, right, we need to keep getting more funding, right? We need to keep getting more money. Well, why exactly do we need more money? Well, I guess let's come up with like this elaborate marketing plan that would justify why we need another $1,000. Let's come up with a plan for all these people that we want to like hire and bring on, or interns. Keep in mind that we're talking about all these things when the actual product EscapeCodes was still not in a state where there was like, it was providing value to anyone. We didn't have anyone that wanted to use the product, but we were still going down all these rabbit holes. And that's kind of what I mean by order of operations. None of this stuff actually matters if you haven't managed to make something yet that is useful for at least one person. And I think the main solution to avoid this mistake is to start treating complex strategies as sort of a red flag. And I kind of chose this meme because I think it illustrates a funny point, which is that the people who are usually really good at doing something tend to have the same sort of simple approach to it that like a beginner would have. So even though building something from scratch is a really hard problem, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need a really complex strategy to solve it. And to connect it to the class again, like when my group was taking this class, our kind of complex strategy was we would like really pour over like really minute details in our presentations, all the little sentences on the slides, all the little pictures, and we would say, how do we tweak this so that Professor Soloway tells us we did a good job? We could have spent all that time actually working on our project and trying to figure out how to make it useful for people. And so what I would suggest is, I found this phrase helpful. Think about what an idiot would do in your situation. And that kind of tries to help you think about what's the simplest, most straightforward approach. What's that beginner approach? That tends to be usually the same approach that like an expert would have. So to wrap things up, I wanted to try and give some maybe more concrete advice. You can take it or leave it, but this is what I think I would do if I wanted to take 441 again. And this is what I would do to try to maximize the chances that I ended up making something that was actually useful and had a use outside of the class and could live beyond that. And I would really double down on that kind of theme of trying to pick and work on stuff that you personally experience. And that's because I think a lot of like the hardest parts of the class become a lot easier when you take this approach. So for example, the secret sauce of your project. Our group, when we took this class, had a really tough time. Like we debated so much about what our secret sauce was. We just made up all sorts of crap and we're like, what's gonna stick? If you were working on a problem you personally experienced, then the way you get your secret sauce is by you just try to actually solve your problem that you personally experienced with the existing tools out there. And if you solve it, great, you like solved a problem for yourself. If you didn't solve it, then you just have to figure out why the existing tools didn't work. And then your secret sauce just falls out like that. You don't have to go through like theoretical, hypothetical scenarios and do that whole exercise. I think persona is also another really difficult part. Our group struggled with this. If you're working on a problem that you personally experience, your persona just becomes people like yourself. You can go off yourself and your own characteristics as a baseline, and that is probably a lot easier than trying to think of a hypothetical person that you may or may not know in real life. And then building your MVP, specifically the viable part of that MVP, I think it becomes a lot less daunting, because to make a viable MVP, your only goal is to solve it for one person, which again is yourself. And that's a lot easier to solve something for yourself because you can get immediate feedback on it by using a solution rather than trying to solve it for an audience out there who you have to find, convince to use your thing, and then translate feedback from them. Yeah, and so I wanted to shout out this source. This is a podcast called Dalton and Michael, that Y Combinator host. I watched like a lot of this stuff after I started realizing that EscapeCodes probably wasn't working, and I just binge watched these videos, and kind of a lot of what I said in this presentation is distilled down from what they say yourselves. So you can check that out if you're interested. That's a good presentation.
Very handy, very good. Your personal experience. Could you go back to the one the last slide? Yeah. Of all those, what's the most important thing they need to think about? Because they're about to do presentation 2, right? Which is the MVP persona presentation.
Yeah, I would say what I would think is the most important is like realize that your MVP only has to be useful for one person. That's like the viable part, right? It has to be useful for someone. And that feels like a lot less daunting to think about than thinking about making an MVP that you're going to launch to like all your classmates. And funnily enough, this is actually how like Gmail started out. Gmail started out with one employee in Google deciding he wanted a better email client interface. And he built Gmail for himself. It only worked for his email address. And then everyone else in the office was like, hey, that looks pretty cool, can we have it? And he was like, oh, it only works for mine, but let me go and make it work for yours too. And he went from that to now, of course, Gmail is used by like billions of people across the world. So I think start with the smallest step, make something that is useful for at least one person. And that, I mean, that in itself is hard enough. I mean, see the title of the presentation.
None of you are gonna do this. Right? You're not gonna do this. You're gonna, listen, but it's hard. You wanna build it for all your friends, for everyone. And you spent months doing just that. If I took it over again, this is what I would do. Are you gonna do another entrepreneurial effort?
Yeah, so one thing that so our team, even though we decided to scrap our current project, what we realized is like having a team of people you can work with and who are all committed to working on something together is probably more valuable than what you actually build. And so the exercise we're trying to currently do is just go back and keep listing out the problems we personally experience in our lives. And then we're gonna get together every couple of weeks and just brainstorm with each other our lists that we have. And then hopefully I'm gonna take my own advice and follow this.
Good. That's important about entrepreneurs. They don't give up. They don't give up. Questions? Did anybody see the, I didn't see it, but someone talked to me about the Cowboys football game yesterday? It went to double overtime, and in the last 4 seconds of the regular game, the Cowboys tied it. In the last 4 seconds, they didn't give up. And the easiest thing to do is to give up. They didn't give up. I loved it. I loved it. Someone was explaining this. You can't give up, and you're not giving up. You're trying again. Any questions for Ashvin?
Yes. Question regarding solving a problem you personally experience. I think, like, for example, in a scenario like this where you're trying to like improve your like technical interview skills, don't you think it would be hard to solve that problem without having the technical interview skills? Given that like an effective roadmap is one that's like tried and true, but you haven't tried it yet.
Yeah. So solving a problem you personally experience is one part, but then you also have to like make sure that the problem you're trying to solve is actually solvable. So like what you said is a good example, right? If I'm understanding what you said correctly, basically, if like you couldn't test this problem on yourself because in order to make this product, you would have already had to have the skills required. So you would no longer be a student learning this stuff. Is that kind of what you were getting at?
Kind of, yeah. It just like seems like you would kind of get into a loop at some point.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes like this problem very hard to solve, the whole technical interview thing, because you can either only be learning it for the first time or you can have learned it and be giving advice, and that makes it hard.
Why did you get the 7,000? Why did you win?
I think it goes back to, so one thing is like, I think there's a conception that like people who give you money to do things are like know what they're doing, and so that's not necessarily true, right? Like the people we pitch to at Optimize are evaluating like tons of ideas. They don't know about specifically technical interviews. So I think what they mostly evaluated us on was how they thought we as a team would work together and whether we worked together as a good team, whether our skills like gave us even the chance of making something. If you listen to like some of those Y Combinator podcasts, like even Y Combinator, which is the biggest startup funder, kind of uses that as their main metric. Like, are the people themselves interesting? Because they're going to switch their idea anyways after some time, right? So
They're gonna pivot, it's the people. They fund the people, not the idea. Excuse me, not the idea, the people. It's interesting. That's why you can't do it yourself. You have to have a team. Now, of course, you break the rule. Any other questions? Persona. Nail the persona. The persona is you. Any more questions for Ashvin?
How much of your funding did you end up using and what did you use it for?
So we actually ended up using very little of our funding because, again, like in hindsight, we probably didn't, because we were thinking funding was like a metric of success. We thought that's why we have to apply for this thing, but we didn't actually need any money because for software development, right? A lot of it is just going to be free for the beginning. And, so we just have it sitting around. Thankfully, the LSA Optimize program is like very lenient and hands-off with how you use your funding, which I think is a good thing because it allows you like flexibility. So we're kind of hoping we can maybe put it towards, if we decide to work on a new thing, it'll be there. So yeah.
You're all gonna make this mistake. But that's all right, because you iterate. Remember what Tom Malas said. You're probably wrong. Well, he didn't say it to this test, but he usually says it. You're probably wrong. You're wrong about most of the things most of the time. And the only way to do this is to iterate fast and realize. And that was Zuckerberg's idea of fail fast. Build something, try it. It didn't work. He didn't take those fights with the what was it? Metaverse. He kept building it. I mean, how many billions did he spend before they created it? And that is interesting, right? How many billions of dollars got spent on the metaverse before they said, it's not gonna work? It's interesting. They spent 5 months before they decided it wasn't gonna work. Minimally viable. You emphasize the word viable. Viable product. Do something for somebody. Okay, well, thank you, Ashvin. Thank you again. Thank you.